if they so desire. David chose to take this plague, and by choosing to take this plague, 70,000 people were killed. 70,000 out of 1.3 million people in 3 days, 70,000 were killed. Can you imagine that many bodies being around at one time, knowing that God had did this? So when this happened, David found out that God will do exactly what he said. But it came to a point where the angel that was destroying the men was getting ready to raise his hand against Jerusalem. And God asked him God told him to stay his hand. Stay your hand. Do not destroy anyone there. Stay your hand right now. And that was the mercy that David thought God would do. He knew that God had that power to do that, to have mercy upon the people. So God asked him to stay his hand, and he stayed his hand. And when he stayed his hand, then David had to find out what he needed to do for the recovery of what he had with God. We know that sometimes we have to have a recovery plan with God. When we do things that we should not do, when we say things that we shouldn't say, there is a recovery plan in which we must go to God. And through this plan that David had was, God had told Gad to tell him to build an altar, to go and build an altar and to have a sacrifice before him. And as he went for a sacrifice, and as he went to a place, they call it the threshing floor. The threshing floor is a place where they separate the chaff from the wheat. They separate the things that is good from the things that is bad. David wanted this thing separate from him. He wanted to be separated from the things that he had done, and he wanted to ask God for some forgiveness. And so he went to a place where they called a threshing floor, and once he got there, the man that was in charge asked him, so what do you want from me? Why are you here, O king? You know, it was an unusual thing for the king to come to a place like this, but David had something on his mind, and he had a plan that he may be able to get back to God. By doing this, he would be able to do exactly what God said, and that he may be able to get back in good standing with God. Are you in good standing with God right now by asking for forgiveness of him from the things that you have done? But once he got there, the man said, anything that you want, I'll give to you. I'll give to you. I'll let you have it. And some people will take the cheapest way out with God. And they don't care what they can do. If it's the cheapest way to serve God, they'll do it. If they'll give the smallest thing that they have in their pocket, they'll do that. If they can get by with not giving anything, just coming by and tapping the table, they'll do that. And it makes no difference. The cheapest thing they want that they can give, they would give to God. But David said, no, I can't do this. He said, if it don't cost me anything, how can I present this unto God? How can you present something to God that don't cost you anything? And you call this a sacrifice. How can this be a sacrifice? Because it never cost me anything. So I can just put it on the table and just keep walking away and feel good about myself and think God is going to accept that I have given him. But when you give something from your heart and you give something that is needed in your life, God can understand that you are giving from your heart. So as David paid for this land, as he paid for this items that he needed right then, he took these things and he was able to go to God with a clear conscience. Amen. We as people of God must be able to have a clear conscience with God. We must have a clear conscience. A lot of times we pray to God. A lot of times we say things to God and we know that we have not asked God for forgiveness. We know that we have come short to the glory of God. We have come short in what we are supposed to do. But we go through the act of asking God anyway, knowing that we should go to God first and ask for forgiveness, as David did. And we know that we should be able to trust God. Now, David was a man after God's own heart. And he knew that he could trust God. But for some reason, this thing came upon him to not trust God. Sometimes as people of God, we don't trust God. We think that we are able to do it on our own. Or we think that God is not hearing us because he have not answered us in the way that we should want him to answer. But we have an option. We have the option that we may be able to go to God and ask God for forgiveness. Do you know that you have options today? As David had options right here. We have options. We have options to go to heaven and be with God. Or we have an option to go and be with the enemy of our soul. Have you, with the option that you have you used your options yet? Are you standing there now? Or are you standing in a room that you are full of indecisions? You don't know which way you want to go or what you want to do. But as David did, he had his options and he took those options. And we should take the options that we have right now and tell the Lord, Lord, I ask you for forgiveness right now of anything that I have done. Because sometimes we don't even know that we've done something to anger God. We don't know that we have crossed that line. David didn't even know he had crossed the line. Because it seems as though what he had didn't mean that much to him, because he was king. He just asked them to go have a census and count the people. But by counting them, it means that he didn't trust God. He didn't trust God enough to know that whatever happened, God was enough. Whatever amount of people he found, God was enough. And we as people of God must know that God is enough. When you go to that doctor knowing that God is enough. When you go and to pay your bills, know that God is enough. When you get your check, knowing that God is enough. You got to know in your life that God is enough for everything that may come in my life. It makes no difference what happens to me right now. If I would get a pain in my chest right now, God is enough. I know God is able to do all things because I trust in him. We have to trust in God to do what he said he would do. Do you trust in the Lord? Do you trust him with all of your heart? Do you trust him with all your mind? You may be put out. You may lose your job.